Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network. And this is my weekly show where my guest and I play a little movie roulette and randomly select a movie off of my obnoxiously large watch list. Could be basically anything. And this was something for sure. And joining me is George Sirois. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Shane, for having me.
Absolutely. So, George, if you'd like to shamelessly plug anything before we get into talking about The Lady Pays Off.
Yes. In fact, by the time this airs, the event that I'm actually going to will have already passed. But this week I'm actually heading over to the Austin Revolution Film Festival as a nominated screenwriter. My short film script was nominated for Best Short Sci-Fi Screenplay, and it's between me and two other people. So I am crossing my fingers. I'm hoping that this script really finds its way to that award. If not, it's a just a real privilege to be nominated. And in addition to that screenplay, I'm also an author. I'm an audiobook narrator, a podcaster myself. The show that I do is a weekly interview show called Excelsior Journeys, and you can find that everywhere on all the different podcast platforms. And for more on me, just head over to he'sgotit.com.
Thank you so much, George. And please make sure to go check that stuff out and sending you all the good vibes that the festival turns out well for you.
Thank you very much.
And before we jump into talking about Lady Pays Off, I usually do some background on these films. And to be frank, there's not a lot. Um, this is an 80-minute film directed by Douglas Sirk, starring Linda Darnell, Stephen McNally, and came out in 1951. And that's honestly about it, to be frank. So let's jump into. I do want to say at the start, here's the here's the setup of this romantic comedy. So we have Teacher of the Year who makes Time magazine cover, but her life is uneventful and goes to a casino and doesn't know how to casino, winds up losing money, tries to convince the guy who runs this place to not take her money. And then he gets her to become a private tutor for his daughter. And of course, they fall in love. Um, what I just came up with this idea slightly before we started recording. I think I've missed out on an opportunity to rank absurd rom-com setups based off of the movies that I've watched on this podcast in particular, because there's been some wild ones. And this movie, which we'll get into talking about, might be varied by the numbers. The setup isn't. And I feel like that's something that's kind of missing in rom-coms today, because so many of the setups are the same damn thing over and over and over again. But no, at least back then, there's just the weirdest, strangest things. But George, what are your general thoughts on the film?
My general thoughts are the main thing that I would say is that we have seen a lot of different classics.
Mm,
It's always like the classics that really survive, and we know that like through the studio system there were all these icons that were constantly working and constantly putting out like one thing after another, and so many of their works wound up standing the test of time, wound up lasting for so many years, and always gave it like this extra feel of this is the reason why we go to the movies. They
mm,
sit down and let these stars really take us on a journey. It's a real journey for a long period of time, because usually those movies like average about 2 hours.
yep.
But I don't think I've ever seen a movie that has the same sort of disposable feel as so many of the romantic comedies that are out there today. Um, and it just feels like they put as much effort into this as they put into, say, like Made in Manhattan or something. Just something to throw out there. Just there's so many different like random romantic comedies that are just kind of put out there, and you just just let the characters just kind of go on their little wacky journey and everything, and it doesn't feel like there's too much thought really put into it. Like failure to launch, I would say.
Mhm.
Watching that one, I was just like, yeah, I think I'm done. The fact that Peter Griffin was able to make it halfway through that one, he's a stronger man than I am. So that's kind of how this feels. It just feels so disposable. It wasn't so much a movie as it was a contractual obligation. So
Yeah, it definitely feels like the kind of rom-com that made Matthew McConaughey stop wanting to be in rom-coms.
yeah,
Even though they were offering him like $15 million a movie, he's like, I can't do this anymore.
yep,
This is 80 minutes. I feel like the most interesting part of the movie is the setup because it's so strange. Like, how is this even like a reasonable thing? It's just like, well, what if I made you my daughter's private tutor to pay off your gambling debts? It's just like most random thing. But then it just falls into very much of like the daughter's cute. She has this dynamic with the tutor. And then, of course, the tutor and the father wind up in this situation, in this instance, on a boat where it's like, "Oh, we actually like each other." And then, they have a falling out and this movie ends so abruptly.
yeah,
It's like kid does a thing to try to get these two back together, and they're like, "Well, we're back together." And then the credits start rolling. I'm like looking around. I'm like, "Was that
yeah,
it?" And that's the thing. Like, I just summed up the whole entire 80 minutes of this movie in 30 seconds, and that's exactly how it feels.
yeah,
And whether like it's watchable, it certainly is, and it's not like a bad movie, and it's just like you said, it's disposable. If you like rom-coms, it hits all the beats that you expect it to do, and then it's out, and it's just like, well, you had a good time, move on. And the fact that this is like a free use watch on YouTube at this point makes it even more like, well, yeah, it just this isn't a classic where they're going to make you pay money to watch this. It's just there,
right.
so there you go.
Yeah, it definitely plays like the kind of discs that would be a part of like a 2 disc set that has like 50 different comedies on there. So
Yep.
it's basically just like it's the equivalent of a seat filler. Like that's
Yep.
pretty much, like you're here to watch a movie. Well, like all these other movies are sold out. Okay, go watch this one. Like the basic thing you can say that it has in common with them is it's a movie. So
Exactly. It is indeed.
yeah,
And Stephen McNally does look like a guy who would run a casino.
yeah,
Um, and acts like a guy who runs a casino who
hmm,
just happens, and like the young actress who plays the daughter is cute. And at
yes,
least you have a cute little girl who charms this teacher, which interesting thing, I saw some criticisms of Darnell being miscast because she's like she looks like a Hollywood star just playing some like random teacher that has
right.
to like it takes her having to lose money to a casino for a casino owner to basically sign her up as a tutor for her to find a man interested in
Yeah, it goes through quite a few leaps of logic. Funny enough, the one movie that I got a lot of vibes from this was Honeymoon in Vegas. Um,
interesting.
and because like you take Nicolas Cage and Sarah Jessica Parker and put
Yeah.
them together into someone who is very careless with what she's doing and allows herself to be put in the situation, and it really does feel um like that sort of vibe. Only funny enough, you know James Caan's vibe was much more, I guess, to say like more, I don't want to say honest because the guy really did have honest intentions, but it did feel like that was his James Caan's intentions were more for, like more fitting for a movie,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and this definitely feels like this would have been a more memorable film if they did get bigger stars in it.
Yeah.
And it feels like that kind of film where it's like, well, you have a script, it has some basic beats that people are looking for in rom-coms, and I feel like if this had some bigger names in 1951, it probably would have been more memorable. And I feel like that's the gist that we get today is like, sure, they got some big name people in this, but this is so generic and forgettable that it is what it is. This definitely would have been either a Netflix or a Hallmark release. I feel like if this
Oh,
came out
definitely a
today,
Hallmark. Definitely a
Hallmark would
Hallmark. Yeah. It would have to
100%.
take place during Christmas, but yeah, it would definitely be a Hallmark release.
Exactly. She's on Christmas vacation from school, goes to the
Yep.
casino, and then
Yep.
over a course of a week, she's trying to tutor this girl over Christmas.
But I
So,
do have to give the movie credit by just
mhm,
saying like um by really going for it in terms of her character,
yeah.
because like these a lot of movies these days, and I'm not gonna be like agenda pushing or anything like that. I'm gonna just say like the way that so many romantic comedies are these days, and the way they've been for the past several decades, is the guy does something stupid that puts the girl in this really terrible situation, and she is walking herself right into that situation,
Yes.
and is very brash and
Mm.
very like open with her feelings and everything. She doesn't come off as a typical um romantic comedy love interest.
Well, and
She
that's
is, which I actually kind of admired that opening scene with talking about her getting that teacher of the year award, and being asked what is it that you need to, what is it that the parents need to do as well with their children as you have with theirs. And she says something like a shot of whiskey and a bottle of Valium, or something like that. And that got my attention. I was like, oh, we're going over there. Okay.
yeah.
Just basically just saying you're opening up a romantic comedy and you want this lead character to be on your side.
Mm.
You want to be on this lead character side, but she starts off with, I hate your kids. That's
Well,
I give
and
it credit. That's pretty good.
and the fact that she obviously is intelligent. She is a teacher, but she does something so naive because she's in a situation she's not familiar with.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate that. That's a good point that you bring up is that like she doesn't necessarily feel like your standard kind of character that you get from a lot of romantic comedies today.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, this was a watchable, disposable 80 minutes of your time.
Hmm.
And if you want to watch something a little bit romantic with somebody, it's right there on YouTube. That's not going to
Yeah.
cost you anything. And
Right.
it goes by and it's some fun along the way. But I
Yeah.
guess George, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to throw out there?
I would say like I'm curious that that they would make the teacher apparently so bad at math. I do get a kick out of that. The fact that she kept on saying, "Oh, I thought these were $1 chips." Was she covering the two zeros with her thumb or something when she put them down? Like I don't get it. It was as blatant as humanly possible, just saying these are $100 chips. There's no decimal point after
Yeah.
the one. Did she look at like a scrap of dirt or something and look at that on the chip and just like, oh, this is only $1? Like I don't get that logic at all. You have to take some serious um suspensions of disbelief in order to see to really kind of get on board with this premise. But I will say that the one thing I did like about the guy is that um he was very honest and forthright with everything that he did. And I loved the never give a sucker an even break scene. That was a great scene because it showed that the um that it's still going to take a while for the girl, for for this teacher and everything to really actually make that change, because
Yeah.
she was so willing to just like walk, just once the IOU was burned up that she thought was hers, and she's ready to just like, and is ready to like announce her departure and everything, and really dig it into the guy for this. and then he goes and pulls out the real one. I actually got, like, I smiled from that. I was just like, very good, very good. That's a nice little nice little redirect there. I thought that was very interesting.
I think that was probably the best scene in the movie because
Yeah.
it was very interesting. And here's the thing: you don't become the owner of a casino without knowing how to play some games.
Oh
And
yeah.
he plays her very well, and
Yes.
that scene really plays off that way. And there's a couple of scenes that stand out in this film, and that's definitely one of them. But McNally does a good job. Darnell does a good job. Gigi Perot, young daughter, does a good job being cute.
Hmm. Yep.
All you need from her, be a cute little girl.
Yep.
And yeah,
Who is
so
just depressed, who is just seemingly depressed. And I would think, like, if it the way that her illness is being brought up, if it sounds like she was like physically ill.
mm,
So the fact that they bring up depression, I actually kind of admired that a little bit. I was just like, huh, they're 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 putting the spotlight on something that normally doesn't get the spotlight. And
yeah.
it's something that a lot of people, I think, can really identify with. So there were more pluses than I thought there would be. As disposable as this is, like we said, hour and 15 minutes of your time, you're in, you're out. It's all good. And I appreciated that there wasn't so much miscommunication that guided
Mm,
the running time, because like that's usually what happens. Um, but I also, kind of got a kick out of how the former lover
mm.
gets thrown into it. And that's very, very much in the style of the typical romantic comedy. Um,
Yeah, that was definitely one of those tropes that
yeah,
popped up that it's like you see that a lot.
yeah,
And you see that a lot of like that big city girl comes to small town and there's a woman in this small town that's always been smitten with this guy, but he
hmm,
has eyes for big city girl
yep,
coming into the story. And that those are definitely some of the elements where it's just like we've seen this a lot and rinse dry repeat in a lot of modern romantic comedies. But I do appreciate your point, George, that like this is certainly the blueprint for modern
oh yeah.
romantic comedies.
it
And
reminded
not
it reminded me of when I saw a random analogy here. It reminded me so much of when I saw From Russia with Love. And I'm
mm,
just like, oh, that's where this came from, and this came from, and this came from. And you can see like where all of the tropes of the spy genre,
yep.
and especially the James Bond films, the James Bond template, were laid out. So that's kind of the way that I felt with this. It was just like um nowhere near as good as From
Mm,
Russia with Love. I still rank From Russia with Love as my number one Bond film. Um but at the same time, like I got a kick out of seeing like it's like going through like all different types of multiverses, and you get to that prime universe where
yeah.
everything really started. And that's pretty much what this is. So this is rom-com prime.
Yep. I do appreciate your point about From Russia with Love because that is the blueprint for
Yeah.
James Bond movies, beat by beat by beat by beat,
Oh
and
yeah.
still one of the best. So certainly agree there too. But yeah, so if you're in the mood for easy going rom com that's an hour and 15 minutes of your time on YouTube, go check out The Lady Pays Off. But George, thank you for coming on and having this discussion about movies with me.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
And thank all of you for listening. Make sure to like, comment, and share on this episode. What are some of your like those older rom-coms that you appreciate that, might not get the same attention as like some of those Billy Wilder ones, like Some Like It Hot or The Apartment and stuff like that. Kind of fly on the radar and, you just enjoy a good time. Make sure to follow or subscribe. And wherever you listen to your podcast, the SPNM crew is ever growing, bringing on new guests and starting some new shows. So if you want to be a part of it, make sure to reach out. And if you like our logo, make sure to check out High Flyer Creative for all your digital marketing needs. But most importantly, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network.